Recording in progress.
Hi, everybody. Hello, hello.
Hi there.
Hi. I'm gonna just keep admitting people for now. Hello, everybody. I got this little jingle in my head. I can't remember where it's from. Hello, hello. I'm glad that we're all here. Hello, hello. Let's start with a great big cheer. Is that a preschool thing? I hope everybody's well. Lori and I were just saying it's beginning of holiday madness and meetings are like unpredictable, either well attended or not. So hopefully we get a good group of folks today. I think Shasta is able to come, so we should get her any second. Everybody can see my screen, right? Okay. Well, why don't we we'll get going, and I think we're gonna get some more people coming in. I am seeing some folks who maybe might be your first time, or folks that hadn't been with us for a couple of rounds that are here. So let's just talk again, remind everybody what we do together. We are here on a monthly basis. We've been trying to connect national health and climate data experts and invite everybody to exchange knowledge on priority tribal adaptation and resilience data needs. So this group really focuses a lot on data access. We share tools, practices, ideas, and lessons learned from the field. And oftentimes in real time, we will share ideas, feedback, and thoughts that actually can help contribute to improving tools and other resources around the country. And we're sort of compiling those themes so that we can make sure we can share these thoughts with other data providers. And we also explore opportunities and scale up these solutions to address tribal resilience data needs. So we're welcoming you back for December. I'd encourage everybody to introduce yourself over chat, even if you've been here before. And then we always like to say hi to anybody who's brand new and make sure you have a chance to introduce yourself verbally. We'd love to meet you. I'm trying to see who's new here. Alex, have you been here before?
Yeah, this is my second one, but
okay, maybe you weren't on cam last time or something.
Well, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm Alex Nicolai, and I'm with the Public Health Alliance, and I'm the climate and policy coordinator there.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you're back. Emma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Emma. I'm an environmental scientist at OEHA. This is my second week, so hi.
Welcome. We're glad you're here, part of the team. Let's see, who else is new? Nikki, we've heard from you before, right?
Yes.
Yes, well, we're glad you're back. Isabel, I'm glad you're back. I think you were out for a bit. Nice to see you. Carmen, I think you've been here before. Do you want to say hello again? I know we're going to hear from you a lot today.
Hello. I think I attended the first and second meeting, and then Lori just took over from there.
Yeah, yes. Well, we've been very happy to have Lori's participation and OEA in general. So thank you. And Lisa, we're happy you're back. Actually, I want to say hi again because I think the last time you were here, you were in a different role.
Yes, perfect. I was just dropping it in the chat, but yes, great to be back. Lisa, she, her pronouns. I'm here with the Community Resilience Centers grant program at the California Strategic Growth Council. We're housed as part of the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. So we just released draft guidelines. I'll talk about them more later, but yeah, thrilled to be back.
Perfect. Super glad you're back. And Shasta, hi, you're here. Is there anything you want to say up front here?
What's up? Sorry I was late. A lot of overlapping meetings today. Great to see you all. I'm really looking forward to hearing what our presenters have to say today. And Lori, I want to make a personal thank you to you for texting me those ridiculously awful dad jokes so I could share them with my dad, whose reaction was basically, oh, that's terrible. And then he's telling them to everybody. So thanks, I think.
Now we want to hear one.
Now you guys want to hear the jokes. This is the one I can remember. Why do Norwegian boats have barcodes? So they can Scandinavian.
Oh my.
So Shasta, what does a tick and the Eiffel Tower have in common?
I don't know.
They're both parasites.
Oh, wah, wah.
That was perfect. That was a perfect joke for this group. Thank you, Lori.
Anyway, hi everybody. Great to see you.
Okay, so we're gonna do what we normally, and is there anybody else who wanted to introduce themselves out loud? Patricia, hi, welcome. Glad you're here again. Okay. All right, well, why don't we just go to, we're doing our normal thing. We're gonna go through member announcements, and then we're gonna hear from AWEA, who has just recently released their report that this extensive process they did to do tribal listening sessions around the state. Can't wait to hear about it, but first we'll do member announcements. So this is the time to share any relevant information for your fellow members of this group that, you know, it's related to tribes, climate change, adaptation, health, data, anything that you feel like each other would benefit from knowing about. And I got a couple things, but I was going to let other people start if you would like.
Oh, Lisa.
Sure.
Oh
I'll
yeah,
chime
Lisa,
in.
sorry. There you go.
All good, no worries. Yes, so I'll drop the links in the chat in a moment, but the Strategic Growth Council, we just released our round 1 draft guidelines last week for the new Community Resilience Centers program. So as a reminder, it's a $270 million program to fund new construction and upgrades of neighborhood level resilience centers, both during climate and other emergencies. Also funds for year-round programming, implementation, and planning dollars are included. We're open for public comment through January 27th. And so I'll drop all of that in the comments. And we have a bunch of public workshops, including one specifically for tribal communities. I do want to spotlight that we have a tribal funding target. We're allowing the indirect cost rate that tribes have negotiated with the federal government and a few other kind of added components to really try and ensure tribal access. So would love, you know, robust input and comments, and always happy to meet one-on-one with folks. Thanks.
So it's not a carve out, but it's a particular target for tribes. Okay, cool. I'm excited to look at those guidelines. I want to duplicate my DNA 4 times just to provide comment on everything is up for public comment right now. Okay, any questions for Lisa? Okay. Who else?
I should probably share that Paula, on behalf of the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, was awarded a regional climate collaborative grant. It's $1.75 million. And I now have 1.75 million more gray hairs. But you know, it's exciting. It's going to be a lot of work. I'm freaking out a little bit. You know how it is where like you get a grant and you're both happy and then also like, oh my God, why? That's sort of how I'm feeling right now. But you know, with Angie and Josh's help and all of the great network that we've created, including all of you, we are, I think, going to really stand up something that's going to be important and useful and hopefully replicable, not just for Southern California tribes, but nationwide. It would be great to see that. And I'm also happy to see that there are plenty of other grant opportunities out there from California right now, and also just nationwide, that hopefully will allow for more tribes and tribal serving organizations to be able to do similar kinds of work. So it is a good time to be doing climate work right now with all of the money that's out there. And yeah, Lisa, thank you for putting the link in there to the community resilience centers, because that's another great opportunity. So yeah, the only thing I worry about, honestly, is duplication of effort where similar projects are funded. But I mean, it's just something that seems to happen. So that's my good news.
We also got I think the last time we were here, we announced that we got the new training award for our Tribal Climate Health Project through the BIA. We also got the Data Development Award right, Shasta? So
Yeah.
that's another gray hair or two, but it means we get to continue this process and everything that we're doing related to developing data, making data for climate adaptation and health adaptation more accessible for tribes. And we'll have more to say on that, including this round. We're trying to do an entire questionnaire that will go out to the tribes around the state specific to their data needs, vulnerability data needs. And then Serena, I know you, so Serena's on our team. I think you introduced yourself last time. She's back and she's going to share with you a little bit just about the new training that we've started and what's next for it.
For sure. Thanks, Angie. And hi, everyone who I haven't met yet. My name is Serena Soar. I'm an independent contractor for Angie's company, Prosper Sustainably, and I primarily support this program, the Tribal Climate Health Project. And yeah, so on the training side of things, we started up a new advanced training series. It's monthly. We just started it last month in November, and it's going to be a whole year long. So up until October next year. We got a good group of folks registered. We had about 25 people come to the first one, and we have our second meeting tomorrow. So we'll see if we get some new faces in there, but registration is closed. So hopefully, those folks keep coming. But the purpose of that training series is kind of similar to this group, people who have worked on adaptation work and have tips and tricks to share with each other. So really just creating a network and community for people to talk about these things together, especially people in the tribal space, because it's different. So creating a safe space for people to share with each other, I think, is really important for us here. So yeah, we'll keep you updated on any good learnings that come out of those meetings.
Thanks. Anybody else have anything to share? Okay, great. Let's get into the meat of today's conversation. So we're really pleased to welcome back some of our two favorites, Carmen and Lori from OWIHA. They're going to share with us sort of summarize their report, and like we always do, we'll have a presentation followed by some Q&A and discussion. And we'll end by noon. Okay, thanks, Lori. And Carmen, whoever wants to take it from here. And I think, do I need to make somebody a host? I think I do.
Carmen.
Yep, sorry, I haven't done that yet. Let me do that now. Okay. Carmen, you should be ready to take over and drive.
Okay, now I can share my screen. I think.
Let me stop sharing
Oh,
mine.
it's not letting me. Huh. Hang on. Maybe it's me.
That's all right. Hey, Lori, do you want to just tell us a little bit more about who you and Carmen are and your roles while we get this up and running?
I still get the message that host
Sure.
disabled participant screen sharing.
I work for Office of the. Does she need to be made co-host?
I actually made, I made you
I'm
the
Lori
host.
Montserrat. I work for the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, which we lovingly call OWIHA. And I'm getting an unstable internet connection, which is always just so lovely. And Carmen is my boss. She is possibly the best boss ever. And she's doing the screen sharing, which makes it even better. And I'm going to stop talking because my internet's unstable.
Yeah, man, I think I'm ready to go. Yeah, Lori, I asked Lori if she wanted to screen share, and she said that she would be thrilled if she didn't have to, and I wanted her to be thrilled, so I said, I'll do it. We may have some hiccups here, so please bear with us. Let's do a full screen
And
here.
I don't see anything, Carmen.
Oh, man.
Oh, I do. I see it. Everybody, right? Everybody else, I think, sees it. Lori, oh no.
Do you see our title slide?
Yeah. Yeah, it says indicators of climate change. Mm-hmm.
Lori, maybe it's just you. We'll just go on ahead in the interest of time. So Angie and everyone, please, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to talk about our report, which just came out November 1st. It's a periodic report that we release about every 4 years. And what it does is it's a one document source of what has been observed as part of California's climate change story. We tell the California climate change story using indicators that track trends and patterns and the multiple dimensions of climate change. This is our fourth report, our fourth edition. It includes 41 indicators, including 6 new indicators, as well as we're really honored to have a new section that addresses tribal impacts that was contributed by our tribal partners, including Paula. Because of the multidimensional nature of climate change, we must rely on contributions and collaborations from the many organizations that are involved in climate change work in California. Here is a number of them. We had about 100 contributors to the 2022 report and are honored to have had participation from about 40 tribes, both as report contributors as well as participants in listening sessions that Lori will cover later on in this talk. California prides itself in its reliance on science as the foundation for our policies. The indicator report looks back, presents observations. The larger effort, the California climate change assessments, rely on original research scenarios and projections to describe what could happen with regard to climate change in California. And both provide context and, again, the foundation for our efforts to mitigate, to set emission reduction goals in the mitigation, in the scoping plan, as well as the actions that are outlined to build resilience and prepare for climate change impacts in California's adaptation strategy. We like to say that the report tells California's climate change story. And if the report is the story, the chapters are the categories of indicators that are displayed on the left side of the screen. I'm not going to go over all of the 41 indicators. They're here to give you an idea of the number and the range of indicators that we include, and what it's organized according to the human impacts on climate change, or the drivers of climate change, the anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions for the most part, and how they're distributed in the environment. We follow what the energy imbalance has produced in terms of changes in climate, indicators that track temperatures and derivatives of temperature, indicators that track precipitation and drought, and then look at how California's physical systems, the hydrological systems and the oceans have been impacted by climate change, and follow the story through to look at ecosystem impacts. A warming climate, changing precipitation patterns, hydrologic changes, ocean changes are having impacts on California's habitats, home to the most diverse, one of the most diverse ecosystems on the planet. And we present indicators that show how vegetation and wildlife are responding to these habitat changes. We look at how human health is impacted. Human health is impacted both as a result of the direct impacts of exposures to heat, as well as indirect impacts similar to ecosystem impacts. Changes in environmental conditions can lead to exposures that can then impact human health. And finally, again, we are honored to have a new section that describes impacts on California's tribes. What we find in this report is not a surprise. We see a continuation of many of the trends presented in earlier reports, as well as an acceleration of some of the trends. Certain things are happening faster than we had anticipated, and some really troubling upticks or downturns in certain indicators. Of course, the climate system has its own inherent natural variability, and these are reflected as fluctuations. I don't think we have any indicator that show a straight line. And with changes occurring concurrently, they are amplifying their impacts, and we're seeing compounding effects as well as cascading effects across the different systems that are described in the indicator report. So I'm just going to breeze through a select number of the indicators. I'm happy to answer questions later on if we have time. So following the theme of telling California's climate change story using indicators, we have climate change drivers that describe what's happening with human emissions and where they're going. California prides itself in having set ambitious, aggressive greenhouse gas emission reduction goals, but whatever California does would not be really reflected immediately in what we're seeing globally. These graphs present measurements at a representative global site at Mauna Loa on the island of Hawaii, and we see increasing concentrations of atmospheric carbon dioxide. The rate of increase has accelerated in the last few years. Methane levels continue to increase, as do nitrous oxide levels. The oceans have taken a role in mitigating some of the impacts of increasing atmospheric CO2 levels by absorbing about 30% of human emissions at great expense. So with increasing atmospheric concentrations, ocean levels of carbon dioxide have likewise increased. Again, the longest term monitoring site is off of the island of Oahu, also in Hawaii. And they are also alongside increasing concentrations of seawater carbon dioxide, seeing a decrease in pH levels. As you all well know, changing seawater chemistry can have significant consequences on our marine ecosystems. California's monitoring of CO2 levels is not as long-term as Hawaii's, and we have a couple of the longer term stations presented in the report off of the central California coast, off of Santa Barbara, Point Concepcion, and one station is farther offshore and one is closer to shore. This one up closer to shore is showing greater variability because of the influences of wind-driven processes like upwelling. Our temperatures are warming. I think that's not a surprise. The last 10 years have seen the 8 warmest here in California. Over the decades, the increases have been marked since the 1980s. I forgot to add a legend to this bar graph on the right. The blue bar represents minimum temperatures, which occur at night. As nighttime temperatures warm, that presents greater biological implications because of the inability to cool down at night for both humans and vegetation and wildlife. Extreme heat events, these are the hottest of the hot temperatures. We present the 95th percentile of historical temperatures from April to October. It's a complicated metric, but needless to say, we are seeing a greater number of both daytime extreme heat events and nighttime extreme heat events at a representative 13 weather station selection that is meant to cover all of the climate change regions according to the Western Regional Climate Center. Drought is a natural feature of California's climate, and climate change with warmer temperatures, the changing precipitation patterns, decreased snowpack has been exacerbating drought. We show more severe droughts in recent years. You all are familiar with the fact that we had the most severe drought on record between 2012 and 2016 and across the southwestern United States. The last 22, 23 years have been part of a mega drought, the hottest number of consecutive years since the past millennium. Again, the oceans are impacted by a changing climate. The oceans absorb about 90% of the excess heat energy. Our report presents two different metrics that track sea surface temperatures. Longer term data are available from California shore stations. We present 3 here. You see an increasing trend at all of the 3 stations. More recently, satellite products have allowed us to look at trends since 1982. We see warming largely offshore, and the influence of upwelling, the wind-driven pattern I was talking about, is the reason for some of the cooling trends that we see closer to shore. However, in Southern California, there's a definite warming trend over the past several decades. Our glaciers are the most visual evidence of climate change, and it's really part of a tragic story. The Trinity Alps has seen a loss of both its glaciers. There were 2 glaciers in the Trinity Alps. One of the glaciers disappeared completely during the drought, as did 2 of the snowfields. And the one remaining glacier, Grizzly Glacier, was reduced to a size that almost disqualified it from being called a glacier in 2021. However, our collaborator notified me soon after our report was released that as of the fall of 2022, that glacier no longer existed. So we don't have any more glaciers in the Trinity Alps. We also follow changes in the area of 7 of the largest glaciers in the Sierra Nevada, and pictures tell the story here. You don't need a metric to see the shrinkage in the area covered by the Dana Glacier from the late 1800s to 2021. And glaciers do impact, in addition to local habitats in their regions, they have an impact on increasing sea levels, so that melting glaciers globally, in addition to thermal expansion from warming seawaters, are contributing to sea level rise. Wildfires, again, I keep saying it's not a surprise. We saw a record year in 2020 with over 4 million acres of the state burned by wildfires. We see a definite increase in the average annual acreage burned over the decades, a huge jump in 2020 and 2021. The maps on the left also give us an idea not only of the spatial extent of the fires by decade, but also where they're occurring. And so there's been greater number of fires in the last 2 decades occurring in Northern California, and also accompanied by larger areas compared to historically, where it's been pretty spread out with greater fires, greater number of acreage burning in Southern California. Chinook salmon is a species of cultural significance to many of California's indigenous tribes. We present an indicator here for a location in the Salmon River, which is subject to minimal human influence. A companion indicator to this is presents numbers for the Sacramento River, which is more, it's subject not only to a lot of human influences, being in the location it is in, but also is stocked and gets assistance from fisheries. So the tragedy here is that even though there were fluctuations in past decades. Levels have declined significantly since about 2011, and in the past year, numbers have not been over 200. We have about 5 indicators that track impacts on human health. Occupational heat-related illness is one of our new indicators. It's based on workers' compensation claims, and we see about a threefold increase over the past 17 years presented in this graph. Most of the workers impacted are police, firefighters, and those in the crop production industry. And as with the other indicator on heat-related illness and mortality, we recognize that this is likely a representative of severe underreporting. So the numbers probably only represent the tip of the iceberg. Valley fever is caused by a fungus that's endemic in Central California and the Central California coast, and it's notably increased over the past couple of decades. The fungus, proliferation of the fungus is facilitated by warmer, drier climates, and dissemination of its spores are also helped along by, dusty, windy conditions. And finally, wildfire smoke has increased over the past 10 years shown here. This is a satellite-based metric that is also reflective of potential populations impacted by the presence of wildfire smoke. And 2020 is a landmark year where most of the state, actually all of the state, saw a number of days of wildfire smoke, and with a large part of the state having experienced greater than 91 smoke days in 2020. And with that, I'm turning it over to Lori to talk about the tribal content of the 2022 report.
I was lucky enough to work with tribes on the tribal part of the report, and the tribes took all of those indicators that we so carefully picked out and tossed them all back together where they belong. These are the tribes we worked with. You can hit the next slide, Carmen. And in our collaboration with the tribes, we tried to make sure that tribal voices were in the forefront. They speak for themselves. Data sovereignty was respected at all times. This information still belongs to the tribes, and we are sharing it with and only with their permission. Next slide, Carmen. As we saw in the individual indicators, the tribes are seeing all of this. Sea level rise, blocked access to trading sites and to cultural sites. Artifacts are being exposed on the coast and looted and destroyed. And all of this is impacting tribes' knowledge sharing. We heard from someone who was saying that she returned to a site with her daughter that her grandfather had taken her to collect shell, and there were none left. There just are none at that beach any longer. And I think that's tragic when you can no longer even share the knowledge you have. Can you hit the next slide, please? So if you've been to any of the tribal lands, you know that the tribes are typically not in air-conditioned homes. A lot of the elders are suffering without air conditioning. While many of the tribes are able to set up cooling centers for the elders, that means that somebody has to leave their home in order to survive a heat wave. It's straining power supplies. We're all getting hit with the public safety power shutoffs in California, and the tribes aren't able to escape that in general. The vegetation's dying. Native nurseries are having to adjust to be able to provide the native foods that the tribes would like to be able to rely on more. And we've seen throughout the state that the dead trees on tribal lands are just waiting to destroy more of the tribal lands. And cultural ceremonies are impacted. When I first heard this, I thought, I was like, what do you mean? Like shifting times, unable to, one of the tribes in Clear Lake, they were unable to hold their ceremonies this year because there wasn't enough water. And this is a tribe on a lake. There's not enough water to hold the ceremony that's on a lake. I mean, mind blowing to me that that water is unsafe for contact and there's not enough of it. So it is severe. Next slide, please. Groundwater pumping from areas around the tribes and sometimes within tribal lands is really hitting the tribes hard. The small sources for wells and other water sources for the tribes are getting pumped out before it even hits tribal land. And water rights are complicated. And while it may be that it's first in gets the water, I have heard from most of the tribes I've worked with that people are they're just pumping before it even gets there. It's the water isn't there. Streams are running dry, and the psychosocial health of the tribes is being impacted. I heard the term that from one of the tribes in the Owens Valley, that it's learned hopelessness. You've just been beaten down so many times and had your things taken so many times, you just give up trying to fight back. And to me, that's heartbreaking. We also heard about impacts on tribally important foods and animals, changes in taste. We heard about in the Eastern Sierra, the acorns are tasting more bitter. Don't know why, but it certainly could be an increase in the tannic acid in the acorns in that area. Next slide, please. Some of the great things that we heard about that I kind of didn't expect to hear about is all of the great work the tribes are doing in adapting to climate change. Native nurseries and shifting the species that's available to the tribes, monitoring of tribal lands and sticking to it, protecting sites, less dependence on fossil fuels. However, that comes with, does that mean we're going to encourage lithium mining on the tribes in Nevada? I hope not. Siting solar farms, but not just dumping them wherever the contractor says to site them. Site them so that it's useful to the tribe, beneficial to the lands, and doesn't tear things up. Protecting the tribal mineral rights and protecting the tribal water rights. That is just so key. And tribal mental health around this all. Climate change is hard. It's hard to deal with, and it grinds you down, and you just need to take care of yourself. Next slide, please. And to all the tribes that were willing to work with us, thank you so much. This is a road at Paula, and Shasta gave me this photo, and I drove on this road when I was down for a conference this summer, and it is mind-blowing if you've been here, how much water this is and how much just mess and destruction this is causing from this flood. And thanks to everybody on my team, Emma, our newest person, and everyone else. It takes a village for us. So thanks so much.
Lori and Carmen, thank you. So great. I think there's lots to talk about. I've got questions, but I want to open it up to the floor first. Anybody who wants to respond or ask a question?
Don't have a question. I want to just shout out to Lori and Carmen and their entire team. I have never had such a great experience working with an agency as I had working with you and your folks. It would be amazing if other agencies could be as thoughtful and flexible and understanding and open to learning as you all have been. Many agencies just sort of do the checkbox exercise. We've done our thing with the tribes, and you all really put your everything into this. And I am grateful that I was able to participate on Paula's behalf. So everybody else just take note. This is how to do it right.
Thank you, Shasta. I should say that Lori keeps the rest of the team on track. She's like, whenever we start to stray off the lane, Lori would remind us, no, come back this way. And I would say from a personal standpoint, I really appreciate the opportunity to learn much more from you and the other tribal partners who chose to collaborate with us. We really are honored to have had that opportunity. But I think a lot of the credit for our tribal engagement goes to Lori. She puts her heart and soul into that work.
It actually goes back to the tribes because it's been an amazing run. One of my, I think I can call her a friend at this point, who works for Santa Ynez Shumash. We were talking about manzanita berries. You can use them for sugar. They're pretty sweet berries. You can eat them on their own. And I was saying, it takes so long to gather. I worked for 3 hours and I had a handful. And she kind of like gave me a little whack. And she said, it's a community thing, Lori. It's a community thing. And like, it took about a day for that to really like go all the way through my little head. It was like, oh, it's a community thing. And that's part of what gives the sweetness too, is it's a community thing. As you're using that sugar, you're thinking back on how it was gathering and who you were with and what the weather was like. And, did somebody's kid trip and fall? And that's been the best part of all of this learning, is understanding that it's a community thing, all of us.
Well, and that, since we're engaging in like the mutual admiration circle right here, but I'll just say that that's an important part of what we are learning in doing this work in general through the Tribal Climate Health Project and, everything else that we all do in this space. That goes back to that psychosocial resilience piece of things, the cultural resilience part of things, that the loss of that community, whether it's a loss because of heat or drought or wildfire, or because people are just depressed and they don't feel like they can join anymore. Those are things that a lot of folks don't think about. But that is a really important piece, I think, of our resilience too, the things that we need to try to support. And that are hard things for folks at the agency level or even at the organizational non-government level to understand how vital that is, not just for tribal communities, but for communities in general, to have that sense that we're in it together.
Can I ask a pragmatic question? Because I'm on your website and I just want to see where the report lives, where we can find it. I'd like to use it. I guess I'm wondering, like, those slides are great. I'd love to have those. Like, there are tables I would just use and plop right into a vulnerability assessment if I had access.
I think Emma put the link in the chat.
I just dropped a link in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry then.
Okay.
Great.
And you can use any of it. And at the end of each of the chapter, we're hopefully going to have what we call 2-pagers, which give people direct links to the data. But for now, you can look at the individual chapters, and at the bottom, it's just like, you want to be able to get this chart yourself here. You want this here, so that all of our data is available. But yeah, all of this stuff, I think, is great in vulnerability assessments. And you can, especially for many of the tribes that are harder hit, you can even show how much worse it is someplace than where you are. Santa Ynez has some charts that look at days over 90 degrees, an increase in days over 100, 110. Like, who has an increase in days over 110 degrees? That's really hot. I live in Fort Bragg. We have days over 80 here. So it's crazy when you look at that, and it's easy to pull out that tribal data, and using these links can help you do that. And for any of you guys that work with tribes that want help, they can, ping me through the website, and I can like, oh, this is where the other part. Happy to help.
I've got 5,000 more questions, but I want to let other people chime in. Actually, I kind of want to hear from Public Health Alliance in a way, because I'm wondering, like, you're hearing all this, and what does it mean for you? Like, what should this, part of me wants to overlay everything we just heard, I want to stick it on a map. Are you doing that?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in, because I've been tracking the environmental indicators since I was a CDPH employee, over 10 years ago. So it's really come, now to see the time series, it's actually pretty frightening. So, big commendation to the OEHA team for keeping up the good work. It's really important. And the framing is what OEHA should be doing. From a public health standpoint, the framing is actually pretty lacking. I have to admit that when you start around vulnerability and indicators of human health vulnerability, you actually have to look at what the social determinants of health are now in communities. Our baseline health is what is perhaps the biggest source of human vulnerability. You have huge pockets of population that are struggling to housing or employment or food security. Those are the things. So, we say that, a healthy community is actually a resilient community. And, because state agencies parse out what the responsibilities are, and again, the Public Health Alliance, we represent local health departments, but we're not a state agency. It's the policies that have been historic that have put large segments of the population in a disadvantaged social position, and the tribal communities are paramount on that list of folks through historical processes have been disadvantaged. So in a way, you can build all the seawalls you want around disadvantaged communities, but if you don't change the living conditions of disadvantaged communities, you're not going to change the fundamental resilience of populations. So that's sort of our wrap in public health, is that, yes, simultaneously we have to work on adaptation, and we also have to work on mitigation, but there's not going to be a just solution unless the social determinants of health are also dealt with. So it's sort of a three-pronged approach, that it's about adaptation, it's about mitigation, but it's also about health justice and health equity. So, again, because of the way state agencies parse the thing, you wind up with, OEHA dealing with largely environmental conditions, although, it was gratifying to me to see the heat illnesses and occupational heat illnesses, because I actually helped establish the workers' comp information system from which the data. So I'm a dinosaur, but that data source didn't exist before a group of folks in the 90s created it. At any rate, I would just point out that's some of our wrap, and partly what we do in the Public Health Alliance is to make a lot of the data granularly available around the social determinants of health. So when you juxtapose the environmental indicators with the public health information, you get a much more full sense of what's going on with human health. So I know that was a bit of a monologue and a sermon, but it's that framing is really important, because sometimes that it gets lost in the shuffle. But human health is and its resilience is the basis of community resilience. So I just want to emphasize that point. I don't know if Alex had some additional comments as well.
No, I mean, I think you summarized it really well, Neil, and both through the Public Health Alliance and some of our other collaboration, we're also trying to take, I think, some of the approach that Lori was talking about, where we need to actually talk to communities themselves. So just glad to see that aspect being applied with the tribes, but definitely in the entire like climate sphere, a lot of work to be done there.
Along the lines of a lot of work needing to be done, I think, Neil, you're spot on. We're in our silos and we look at our charge. It's OWIHA on behalf of Cal EPA, give us these indicators that track climate change in California. We worked very closely with CDPH, the folks at the Occupational Health Division. Amy Eiserling was the one we worked with on that heat-related illness metric. So it's a collaboration, but I think we need to get a step further. Also, because it's a statewide report, it's really meant to paint a picture. So a lot of the necessary granularity, including incorporating the more socioeconomic metrics and considerations, will need to happen, jointly with CDPH and others. And maybe we could take a look at what our colleagues working on Cal EnviroScreen has done in incorporating socioeconomic metrics and health status metrics as part of their mapping of just impacts of environmental stressors on California populations.
Yeah, one of my dreams in life is I just see it in every facet of my work that agencies are just not able to work together as much as they would naturally like to, and wondering, I always want to pull people together with a whiteboard and say, all right, who's doing what and who's going to pull it all together. So you can each do your pieces, but who's going to pull the pieces together? And it's kind of why I've called out Public Health Alliance, only because you have the benefit of being on the outside. You actually could be the puller together of data that makes sense. And I think, that it's very health focused and also could benefit from some of the information that's coming out of OWIHA on the climate indicator side, like inclusive of more of those. So I don't know the right answer. I just keep wishing we could have a strategy that's broader.
Yeah.
Isabel. Oh, sorry, Lori, you were going to say something. Go ahead first.
No, go ahead, Isabel.
Oh, thanks. I have it's sort of an administrative question that might go to this. Is there a directory of us? Because every meeting there's new people and we introduce, and sometimes I get the information jotted down and then halfway through a presentation and I miss stuff. And I was just wondering, is there something that could be shared so that when we can more easily communicate with each other sometimes?
For sure, but I need to update it. But there is, I will put the link in here. Just know it's not updated.
Okay. Yeah, I remember filling out one, but it's not, I'm sure, up to date.
I love that, a directory of us. Patricia.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Patricia Kennedy. I'm with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. And I love this conversation. And I feel like I'm having this conversation in every space I'm in. And to be honest, we haven't quite figured it out, right? So maybe the more we have these conversations, the more we can figure it out. One thing I wanted to pin for all of our state folks on, I was actually about ready to send out an email to see if other tribal liaisons or coordinators would like to be on a quarterly meeting around working with tribes on climate change. Very basic thoughts. I don't know if something like this already exists, so keep an eye out for that. Maybe this could be a good opportunity. And then I also wanted to ping Lori and Carmen and hope to have maybe some discussions with you coming up and how the indicators report might inform both the broader fifth climate change assessment, but also the tribal research program, and also how we can learn from you, because I know that you've done such a great job working with tribes. So wanted to share those thoughts.
Thanks, Patricia. I think, we should talk too, just there's some stuff in the RCC proposal that got awarded that I think is helpful here, could help tie together some of these conversations too. But that's the Shasta decision. April, somebody outside of California. Hallelujah. Nice to see you. Do you have your hand raised? You want to say something, April?
I'm putting in the chat, so the new tribal liaison for the Southwest Cask, her name is Anissa McKenna.
Good to know. Glad they finally found someone.
Oh no, you're muted.
She's really young and new, but she's she's definitely glad we have somebody there. So.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for the update.
And
hey, before we go ahead,
one more
Jessica.
thing based on what Neil said about, going to the disadvantaged communities, listening to the disadvantaged communities. What I hear over and over again from the state is, what do the tribes see? What do the tribes want? And I'm like, okay, well, which one? Because Bishop wants something different, sees something different than Big Pine, and they see something different than Paula. It's not the disadvantaged community. It's not the tribes. It's not, we got to be willing to do just a tiny bit of work here at the state.
And I'll co-sign with Patricia's idea of quarterly meetings with folks who work with tribes. I am always happy to have any opportunity I can think of to talk to people about working with Paula, of course, because as Lori points out, it's very individual. And then just a broad perspective on best practices on working with tribes. I was able to do that last week at the EPA's Tribal Science Council winter meeting, where I schooled a bunch of EPA people at the Office of Research and Development, which was huge to be able to do that. Like, hey, this is actually what inherent sovereignty means. This is what the trust relationship means. This is why you are required to do consultation and how you are supposed to do that. And all of them that I got feedback from were like, mind blown. I've never heard any of this before. I'm like, why not? You should know everything that I told you already. And that's true at every level. So if we can do more of that and hear more about the best practices and how to approach a tribe versus how to talk about the tribes, that's all really, really good stuff. Neil, you're unmuted. Do you want to add to that?
I think, I think what you said is right on, and that, one of the things that we've seen in our own, Healthy Places Index mapping is that every community, almost every community has an asset. It's not just about deficits, and that has to be recognized, what those positive assets are, and have them come to the forefront and build on them. And I think that's something that the attitude that you're talking about, state agencies, sometimes they look at it from a deficit standpoint rather than an asset standpoint. So I think having the community voices, raise what those assets are, is really important. And for the state folks to understand that they need to deal with that as well, not just look at people as if they're just the sum of all their deficits.
So I want to be respectful of time. Isabel, through the link that you asked for on the directory in the chat. I don't know, Laura, if you want to stick around for another few minutes, or Carmen, for any remaining questions, but wanted to make sure folks that need to go, we say goodbye and thank you for participating. As always, we love these conversations and appreciate your participation. I would stick around for another few minutes if anybody would join me. Lori, I have one more question for you. So yeah, anybody who needs to go, thank you. And we'll see you next month. Happy New Year. Lori, you said something I thought you said it quick, and I thought, oh my God, it cuts right to the heart of a lot of my work. And you said that the tribes told you not to like parse back out. some of the indicators. You had grouped them and they said grouping them. Can you tell me more?
It would exactly the opposite. We had pulled these indicators apart, you know. We look at greenhouse gas and nothing else. We look at sea level rise. We try to be super careful not to get noise from one indicator to the other. And then working with the tribes, they're like, well, you can't talk about heat without talking about illness. You can't talk about, you know, vegetation range shift without talking about wildfires. They just like put everything back together, and it was wonderful.
Right. Gosh, that's hard for my brain to not group.
The one thing though, and in fairness to the other part of the report, Lori, which is like, you know,
The big part.
the bigger part, the geeky part. We have really dense narratives in each of the technical write-ups for the indicator. And we do say how it connects to others when we talk about factors that affect it, or the so what, why is it important? We do stray away from just the metric or the indicator itself, but they're still in nice little compartments and nice little indicator categories. And we say, you know, individually and collectively, this is the California climate change stories. But I think the beauty to me of the tribal reports is this is the tribe story. And so it's not segregated into little pieces. It's like, this is how we, the tribe, are collectively impacted by things that are interconnected. So it's so just in fairness to the other part of the report, we do recognize they are connected.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just gonna read that whole thing up and down and probably reference it all over the place. So thank you for your work. Anybody else?
Angie,
before
you'll
we
get
close
a
out?
medal if you read it all. It's over 600 pages.
It's like, yeah. You may want to take that back,
The tribal
Angie.
part.
Yeah.
Okay. When I said it was dense, I meant it was dense.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Congratulations for even getting to the point where you could release something like so big.
No kidding, no kidding. Yeah, the tribal part was ready on time. Thank you, tribes.
Yay.
And the rest of the report was a year late. I was like, you know, you got to get this done. And then tribal part's done, not the rest. So
I feel yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like that's it for everybody. Does anybody else have anything burning? Okay. All right. Lovely to be with you all. Happy holidays.
thank you all so much.
Yeah, stay well. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks again.